All right, welcome everybody to another weekly live stream of Subtle Asian Voices. Today we have a very special guest, JR, with us. What we're going to do his introduction in just a few minutes. But he is someone that wears many different hats, and in meeting him and talking to him, he has a very fascinating story that he's going to take us through. And without any further ado, why don't we just have JR give us a brief introduction of himself.
Hey Brian, thanks for allowing me to be on Subtle Asian Voices. It's really nice to be on here after listening to a couple episodes and talking to you. I'm honored that you're giving me a chance to tell my story with your audience. I think the best way I can describe myself in one sentence is I feel like I'm a Renaissance man. And the thing is, I had to look that up because I've always heard the term, but I've never understood what it was until right before this podcast recording. And so, and then the other part I was thinking is a jack of all trades. And let me kind of go into some of the many hats that I wear. I work as a digital strategist in web, email, social, and also in marketing, advertising. So those are some of the ways that how I work to put food on the table and a roof over my head. But the other hats that I wear is the musical hat, where I grew up learning how to play piano. I was a church pianist growing up. I played in the church for quite a while. And recently, actually a couple of weeks ago, I just picked up a bass guitar. And so cool. in between meetings, I'll go ahead and practice my scales. It's actually like an arm's length away from me that I keep it very close to my workstation and just pick it up and play. So there's a musical side. I am also a father of two very young children. So I have the father hat. I am a husband. So I have that hat as well. So lots of different hats that I wear of myself, lots of different skill sets. And I think a Renaissance man, kind of a jack of all trades is the best way to describe myself in like one complete sentence.
There's probably no other fitting description I could think of as well. And if I were to make one additional comment, so I've probably been doing media type interviews and things like this with individuals for 4 or 5 years. By far, you have the best sounding mic that I've ever heard. I know it's a strange thing to comment on, but it feels like I'm like I'm listening to a radio show. But anyways, why don't we move on to the next part? So what I like to do with my guests usually is to just do a couple of rapid fire questions, just little fun questions. Maybe helps us get to know you a little better in different ways than we might not be able to. So I'm going to say 2 things, and then you just let me know what comes to the top of your mind first. Okay.
All right, bring it. Bring it. I'm ready. I'm ready for this rapid fire session.
All right. First one, West Coast or East Coast?
Oh, East Coast. East Coast.
East Coast.
East Coast. Even though I grew up on the West Coast. So
yeah, I knew that. I thought you were going to pick West Coast. It's very interesting. All right. Pho or ramen?
Ramen. I'm going to go for ramen. I'm trying to go quick.
Driving or public transit?
Public transport. Yeah.
Sushi or Korean barbecue?
These are hard. Sushi.
Whoa, interesting. Moderna or Pfizer?
Pfizer.
Cats or dogs?
Oh, I had to pick. Shoot. Dogs.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
And last one, sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. Very unexpected.
Those last ones were easier, but those first ones, oh my goodness.
It's common Asian ones you gotta ask. Okay, very cool. Well, you kind of told us about yourself already, but you live in the Maryland area. Is that right? Like, I know you live in the DMV, but I wasn't sure like what part. The
DMV is so vast, and I happen to live in the Northern Virginia area.
Northern Virginia.
So that's where my turf is.
Gotcha. Okay. And you already mentioned like something about your hobby, which was like music, but do you have other hobbies that you like to dabble in?
I like to recent hobby that I started getting into was learning about the stock market. So I feel ashamed for not getting into learning about stocks into my age. I'm in my mid-30s. If I could go back in time, I would definitely tell myself to start investing early, because that's the key. Starting early. I'm 35 now. I'm only investing in the stock market. I have other investments and stuff, but the stock market was something I've always been reluctant to do, kind of the fear of the unknown. And I've always thought about it as it's gambling with of that sense. But as I learned more about it, and I think the biggest part was having friends who knew more about it and actually took the time to educate me about what all that all goes down, and then also reading books. So self-education and finding people who are more experienced at it really helped me understand how the stock market works. So now I'm dabbling into stocks, reading the news on it, doing my own research, so that way I can be a better educated and informed investor.
Very nice. We could probably go on a whole tangent about finance, but let's not do that. But let me ask you, since you are like in the heart of it, real quick, in your conversation so far, what maybe is like one big thing that you've learned that you would take a good takeaway from it, aside from starting early, because you mentioned that one.
There's a quote from, I forget which book, I think it's more of a saying, is that past performance does not guarantee future gains. So take everything with a grain of salt as you're looking at historical reports, as you're looking through financial records, looking at through press releases, gaining sentiment, and understanding that there are other variables at play that take part into how the stock market is working, from things that we can't control, through things that are government related, to the consumers. There's a lot of different variables. So you gotta, I think the fun part for me is doing the research and looking into the different areas. And the good thing is that the fun part is with the friends that we talk stocks with. Each of us come from different parts of life, and also have different professions and different interests. And when we talk about it, that shared knowledge kind of helps us understand different things about the market, about different industries. So with our powers combined, we could be Captain Planet, but the goal, of course, is to be rich.
Of course. I'm gonna get very side tangent. I love the topic of personal finance. So we can move on there. Very, very awesome quote, by the way. Certainly historical performance doesn't dictate future earnings. That's a very great practical advice. Okay, let's jump into the main theme of today, which is going to be a focus and deep dive into the different hats that you wear from a professional standpoint. And I know you described a couple of them already, but I do know you do a couple more things because you do so many. So what are some of the other professional hats that you wear when it comes to, let's say, side hustles? And then I would say digital strategist would be your main one. What are some of the other side hats, side hustles that you wear?
So some of the side hustles that I wear include being a CEO of a digital marketing agency called Wasa Media. I'm the co-owner and CEO. My partner is a Marine veteran, and I am an Army veteran. And when we were working together, we started working really, really well, working in government, social media, and public affairs. And after we kind of left that organization, we realized that we worked really well together. And I knew he had this venture. He founded the company in 2013, and he was asking for someone to help him grow the business, and I was interested in it. I loved being able to provide consultation and also helping customers with growing their digital reach. And the biggest part I really enjoyed the most is helping with the strategy part, and what I'm having fun doing in this agency is learning about all the different industries and how digital can help amplify their reach, their marketing, and also, of course, in the consumer world, is help increase their sales. So the problem solving, diving into the mind of their customers is the most fascinating part about handling or being part of this digital marketing agency.
Okay, very cool. And we might ask you some more questions about Wasa Media as well. I was brought viewed a very, very cool vision and mission that you guys have on the website. I was looking through it. Very clean. I wish I could make a website that beautiful, but it's very nice. Explains what you guys do.
We could talk offline and
Yeah.
discuss business on it, Brian. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to like chat. You're in the DMV too. We should probably get together at some point and like meet up over what did you say? Sushi? Sushi was like
Or ramen.
or ramen.
Or ramen.
I haven't actually unfortunately been to a ramen place in DMV yet because I don't know where to go. I'm still new to the DMV, by the way. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that. But
I know a couple places I could take you.
we can chat about that after. Okay, so Waza Media is another side hustle. Do you have other ones that you do dabbling in the side?
Yes, the other hat that I wear is I even though I am an Army veteran. I served on active duty for 8 years, and I am currently in the Army Reserve. So that's the part-time 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in a year, sometimes a little bit more, depending on what the mission is. And I am a public affairs officer. And what that does is it's similar to kind of like a PR rep on the civilian side, where we wear in that role, we wear different hats, everything from public relations, community engagement, digital strategy and execution. And sometimes we do some production. So it's video, photo, and also content creation. So we work on that with our military unit, and we become consultants to the boss about how, depending on which field we're in the military, we help guide the boss in which direction we need to go. And it was really my military experience in public affairs that helped bring me to where I am today on the civilian side, as a digital strategist and also as a CEO of my digital marketing agency, Wasa Media.
Like, what's fascinating about all this that you describe it is, in my mind, I'm thinking, one, you're a dad. I don't have no idea how you do all these different things. And two, which is actually one of the side hustles that I originally followed you for, you haven't even mentioned yet, is headshots. But the fascinating thing to me is that in my mind, all I knew about you was headshots, and who would have thought meeting you would uncover all this other stuff that you're talking about. So it's fascinating, very, very fascinating.
I think I'm more like an onion. I'm thinking about that quote from Shrek. Onions are ogres are like onions, and it's not because we stink that they're stinky, but they're they have layers, and everyone's got and I'm sure you've experienced this too, interviewing people for your podcast, is that everyone's got many layers. There's more than just one dimension to someone. And so I really like how in this podcast you're able to go deep with those layers and find out who people are.
My assumption is that we probably won't be able to go deep enough with all the different things they can do. We're gonna try. Okay. So, with these things, I am genuinely curious, like, how did it all start? Like, what made you do all these things? Like, I'm assuming you didn't have an interest in everything at once. Like, how did it all start? What made you get into these roles?
It kind of did go with everything. I was interested in everything. So I think the time in which all the skills and abilities started to shine more when I was in secondary school, in high school. I was in marching band, and then I was in choir. I was in a magnet program under University of California, San Francisco, called Doctors Academy, where it was a pipeline program to get high school kids into the medical field. And so I was doing all different sides of the spectrum, from creative arts to math and science, all within those 4 years of high school. And I felt that I was conflicted in everything that was going on. And it was even more conflicted when my parents told me, no, they said, no, you cannot go to college, and we will not pay for you to go to college to become a music professor. Because I started falling in love with choral music, and I wanted to be a music composer. I wanted to become a music professor and teach university. And I said, this is really cool. And I loved it. And they said, no, we're not paying for it. So needed to pay for school somehow. And then it was someone in a good friend of mine in my statistics class, my AP statistics class, gave me a flyer for an Army ROTC scholarship. And so the ROTC program is a 4 or 5 year program in which you have military education, and it's an officer training program. So once you get in and then you go through the program, you go through the curriculum and the training and the testing. After you graduate from the program, you can become commissioned as an officer in the United States Army. And so a friend of mine said, hey, I think this is something for you. And she gave me that brochure, and I looked it up, and it was related to nursing.
Okay.
And the nursing is a huge part, because being Filipino, the only professions that are meant for Filipinos are nursing and engineering. Or hospitality. Those are the main three professions. I'm super generalizing,
stereotypical.
But I mean, those were my options growing up. My dad was a mechanical engineer. Mother was a nurse. My sister is practicing as a nurse now, and getting my first career was being an Army nurse, and so that was what brought me over to those many hats that I had in high school, doing music, doing math and science. And it was the math and science. Apparently I was good enough to get a nursing scholarship through the Army. And then the Army paid for it. And then I started venturing off into my career, leaving the West Coast, going to the East Coast, experiencing work life in working in the hospital, taking care of soldiers, taking care of family members in the military. It was great. Out in North Carolina, moved, and then went to Texas, bounced between Texas and a couple other places for training, and then lived in Korea for a year. I lived in Seoul, which was an awesome experience. And I was first thinking Korean barbecue when you did those rapid fire questions. But then I remembered my first love was sushi. So I'm like, oh man, that's hard. But then being able to like go after work from the hospital and then just walk down the street and get beef and leaf like on the street was just great. And having that authentic experience living in Seoul and having Korean barbecue, oh, it's the best. And then living in, and one of the things I loved about being in the military was the ability to travel. The Army sent me to Korea to go live in Korea and go work as a nurse. So I did my day job working as a nurse. At night, I went out and explored, and I did my side hustle in photography. I got connected with a awesome creative group where we did film photography, digital photography, fashion photography. I shot at Korean Fashion Week. Cool. So I got to go on the runway, and I shot for a publication there. And I got to do a couple photo shoots and stuff like that. I started building my portfolio. And it was actually in the year 2014, where Peter Hurley, world-renowned headshot photographer out of New York City, through his program, through Headshot Crew, I was made an associate while I was there. So I was building my portfolio for years, and I made associate photographer for Peter Hurley while I was in Korea in 2014. So that was a huge highlight in my headshot photography career. So that was awesome. And being able to carry my skill set as a nurse, handling the medical side, and then carrying the other hat and skills and abilities as a headshot photographer was a fun part while I was living in Korea. And so the biggest part is how is balancing it. Because there's math and science, and then there's the arts and creative side. And while a lot of people might think they may conflict, I feel like I have a different approach to it. So I feel that with the math and science part is very analytical, but the way I was raised in music was more music theory wise. So I learned a lot of music theory when I was 5 and 6. My piano teacher really drilled in music theory. And I learned notes. I learned how to sight read. I knew tempos. I knew how to transpose on the fly. And it really was just conversions. If I wanted to go from one key to another, just convert over, just count 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, everything is the same. It's just shifting up and down the keys. And so there's a math portion to doing music. And so it kind of goes into and this is probably a whole nother conversation to talk about about the science of art. And I know that you're into photography as well. And I saw some of your kit on Instagram. You're dealing with Flash. Flash is all about.
I guess that's that question.
I was putting you on the spot. So Flash is really about ratios. When you're trying to balance the lighting in a portrait, you have ambient light, and then you have the flash, and so you're trying to balance it so that way the camera you're trying to create a picture that is properly exposed. So you've got ratios and stuff, and so you're dealing with apertures, your ISO and your shutter speed. You've got flash power, you've got ambient light that you have to control. You have all these different variables, and you have to figure out to make it all work. So for me, when it comes to creative, I am doing a creative outlet or using a creative outlet and creating a creative image, but I'm using logic in order to do so.
Yeah.
And so
I guess it makes sense in a way that everything I can see is interrelated. Granted, it is still very mind-boggling at times because there's so many different hats. Because like as you talk about all these things, you're switching between, you know, like you have a music background and you're practicing as a nurse, and then you're doing photography, and you're in Seoul. Do you speak Korean fluently?
Yeah.
Oh no.
I knew enough to get around. 저기요, if you're trying to get someone's attention. 안녕하세요, which is the greeting, and also is also a farewell. I knew my numbers. Oh man, it's been a while. So I left Seoul when I was in 2014, and then I continued in my military career, and I went to Germany. I stayed in Germany for about 4 or 5 years, and then I had to learn German. So had to do language switching, and I actually found German to be easier to read than the language I'm trying to learn now, which is French. So
we dabbled in a lot of different things.
But I'm not fluent in everything. And so while I learned German, I learned enough to get around. I learned to read it. French is super hard. So the tricky part between French and German, if you haven't looked at with German, you read everything. With French, you have all those words, but what I'm experiencing, about 80% of that stuff you don't even say.
You don't say. What's an example?
So omelette du fromage is cheese omelet. About 60% of all the letters on there you actually pronounce in those words. So I'm thinking that I'm thinking from an efficiency standpoint. What's the point of having all these letters if you're not even going to say that? It's just a waste of time. And like, I'm thinking about all the effort it takes to go through all that. Even my German language teacher, I took a course for about 6-8 weeks when I was in Germany. And then he even he teaches also French, but he pulled out a French dictionary. It's like this thick. And then he pulled a German dictionary and was much thinner. But the interesting part is that with German, you can build words. And that's how the vocabulary is built. So if you wanted to say the hospital, so we'll use the word hospital because I know you're into pharmacy. and on the medicine side. So a hospital is Krankenhaus.
Mhm.
So house is a building, which indicates a hard structure, and Kranken has to do with, I think it's medical.
Mm.
So if you break it down by English translation, it is a medical house, is a hospital. And so if you wanted to create an other words, I think you could even do something like auto house, where you buy cars or something. It's and then if you wanted to build a really long word like the lizard who eats vegetables but lives under a rock, you could build that using existing German words, and that becomes a word.
Very cool. That's almost makes me think of like the type of stuff I do in my day job, which is in informatics. You build out an ontology that you can reuse in different areas. But that's different topic.
We're able to bring linguistics and informatics in the same conversation.
Super interesting. But all of these things that you describe, right? Leading into like the next part of the conversation naturally is the inclination for kids of Asian descent are pushed towards, your medical, your engineering. You've said it yourself, especially in Filipino culture, your nurse, your engineers, or hospitality. How did your parents react when you started dabbling in all these other things and veering away towards nursing? Because you say you don't practice nursing anymore.
I hung up my nursing cap, figuratively, in 2015 and completely made the switch over to public relations, public affairs in the military. And so
how's that?
I have, it was a huge jump for me. At first, it was an opportunity to do a broadening assignment as a nurse in the Army. We have opportunities to do something not related to our job in order to gain experiences that we could bring back. So the initial goal was that my boss would let me go do something else for a year or two, come back and go back to being a nurse. It didn't happen that way. and it worked out for me because once I think it was about 2 months in, I loved the job and I was trying to figure out a way, how could I stay here and never go back to nursing in my military career? And so going back to the question about with my parents, the struggle really came when I was in high school, where I was dabbling in arts. I was dabbling in choir, music. I had this mindset. I'm going to go be a music professor. I'm going to go write music. I'm going to go teach music. I love music. Live and breathe music and sing music. Mm-hmm. Parents said no. And I knew that was the hard no. And I over the years, I realized that I was being a nurse and I was in the military. The number one military was to live my father's dream because he always wanted to be in the Navy. Mm. So that was his dream. He always wanted to be in the United States Navy. So I felt like I was living his dream doing that. And then my mother was a nurse, and I felt like I was doing the nursing part for her. So I felt I was living the dream of both my parents of being an Army Nurse Corps officer.
And I'm sure they were really proud because that represented both of their professions. So did you have a conversation?
It really represented both their dreams. And we know that parents really want to instill their dreams into their kids. Yeah. I have hopes and dreams for my kids as well, but not in the same context in which my parents have for me. And my mother passed away in 2013, so she never knew about my transition from being an Army Nurse Corps officer into public affairs. My father, I actually got more flack from other family members and friends for switching over. Because there's this mindset that, number one, culturally, that's not normal. It's not normal because there's this there's a stigma that medicine, engineering, those make more money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not gonna discuss how much money I make, but I'm able to put food on the table and a roof over my head, and my kids can live comfortably in the Northern Virginia area. So, and that's the important part: is can I have a job to support my family? That's the big thing, and the answer is yes. So, I got a lot of flack from family and friends and saying, medicine. You went to school for nursing school. You were a nurse for 8 years, and now you made this career change. Are you going to be able to support yourself? And I'm like, yeah, I can, because I have a skill set, I have training in it, and I have experience. And apparently I'm pretty good at it. So uh, all of the other family and friends, and it kind of goes down to kind of just living your life rather than living for others. I mentioned earlier that I was living my parents' dream, being in the military and also being a nurse. And I found something that was more important to me. I found something that I woke up and realized I'm happy to go to job. I'm happy to go to my work. I'm happy to do this job. And I want to make a difference in the field that I'm in. And I want to surround myself with people that we can work together to make it happen.
Yeah, and this is probably gonna naturally go into another question here about others going through this. I'm sure a lot of other folks probably have an interest in music, just like yourself, or other non-stereotypical professions. But something that you just mentioned in terms of why Asian parents may push kids towards there, like there's a perception that doctors, engineers make a lot of money, they're stable. What are your thoughts? Why do they think that? Like versus like what you're doing now, why would they think you don't make money or unable to put food on the table? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it has to go with why being so I'm first gen. I'm first gen. I was not born in America, so I'm an immigrant to America, and I came with my parents overseas to here, not from the Philippines, but from the Middle East. The mindset, I believe, comes from what my parents knew when they left the Philippines to go work abroad. It was very, very common for Filipinos to go through a job agency to outsource themselves to another country. During the 70s and 80s, it was really, really big going into the Middle East because the dinar was really, really good at the time because oil was the big thing. So I think it was one dinar to about $3 or $4 at the time. Big money, big money. And my parents would send about 70, 80, 90% of it home and live off the 10%. They would have roommates in order to absorb or cut down on costs. So that way they can help their brothers and sisters and their family members back in the Philippines and send them to school, put food on the table back then, because Philippines is during that time was really, really, really hard for my parents and their families. And so what they knew at the time was education was the ticket out of poverty. Mm. And so that was all they knew getting out of the Philippines. Now coming to America and now living in the year 2021, you and I know there's a lot of different ways in how to make money. And one of it is through YouTube. One is through there's influencers that make tons of money out there. I'm working in digital strategy. And then now I'll bring up what's going on with Hollywood. We're starting to see an increase of Asian Americans making it big on the big screen.
Yeah.
And so I think it's because there is the knowledge of what our parents in first gen knew at the time. And that was their way out of poverty. And I don't want to say a generational curse because it really isn't a generation curse. It was just what was their current situation. Because maybe it could be. Got to look into that. However, what they knew was in order to not live the life that they were currently living, they had to do something. And for them, it was education. And the education was a gateway to get a good job. And I think they wanted to instill that to myself and my sister when we're growing up in America. And I think the hardest part for them to realize is that now in America, even anywhere in the world, really, in the year 2021, there's more than one way to put food on the table.
I couldn't agree more. Similar to you, my parents were they were born elsewhere, but I was born in America, and you know they did what they probably only knew. They didn't have much education, so it's like education, and these are stable jobs. Okay, well, now that you have went through it, I unfortunately am part of the stereotype because I'm still in the medical profession. But many people, like I talk to so many people every single day, and they struggle with this. Like their parents put them on this path, and to be fair, actually, I was put on the path too, and I stuck with it. Sometimes I think often about what if I didn't. But what would you say as someone who has transitioned to another path, have been through this challenge? What would you say to other Asians that are going through this kind of dilemma?
So I will talk about my situation first and why I felt comfortable and confident that I could do what I was doing. Because number one, and I think you're gonna like this because I am financially independent from my parents.
I do like that. Okay.
And so they have no resource control over me. I don't live under their roof. I have my own house that I've bought. I live away from them. I am not under the roof, and there's no money tied between us. And I know that financial influence can change how relationships go, especially in families. Mm-hmm. And so they have no leverage over me. So because they have no leverage over me, I can do whatever I want. I can make the decisions. I'm a grown adult. I can put food on the table. I'm not borrowing money from them. And so I am free to live my life. So for those who are struggling, number one, get out of your parents' house. Mm-hmm. Number two, get yourself financially independent from your parents. If you're borrowing money from your parents, give it back to them, pay them back. So that way they don't have any resource control over you. Because, and I will paraphrase this quote from Dave Ramsey from his book, Total Money Makeover, which really helped me get out of debt, is that Thanksgiving dinner tastes different at the dinner table when you owe a family member money. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Thanksgiving is coming up, so yeah, I thought it was perfect. Was there.
It's the fit.
But yeah, for me, it was making sure my parents had no leverage over me, being far away, and not living under the roof, and also financially independent from them. No money ties, none whatsoever, which gave me the confidence to say, let me live my life. Let me make my career choices, and let me decide how I'm going to put food on the table for my family.
Yeah, and anecdotally speaking, or just seeing other people. Are you familiar with the Subtle Asian groups on Facebook?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Fun fact: there's also one for veterans too.
Subtle Asian veterans.
Yes, there is one on there, and
also called Sav then.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like they have one for everything. The funny, not really funny, but like. I never really thought about all the kind of toxicity that could occur when you're in the same household, but the common theme I saw from a lot of people was that, when you are under the same roof, there's a lot of leverage. And I probably saw that comment and advice a lot from others who were feeling pressure to do certain things. And they're like, move out, be financially free, go get a job. And I've had a couple friends do that recently, actually, and it's been pretty life-changing. So I think that's great advice. Okay. How about moving on to another part here now is because you've made a couple of transitions, I'm assuming the path wasn't linear. It was probably there's little bumps and bumps here and there. But one of the, we love a good story, but a good story usually comes with challenges. Now, is there a time in your life you can think, especially when it pertains to career, that you struggled the most to where it's like, whatever you're doing currently, you know what, this probably is not going to work. I'm thinking about quitting, but you did it. Tell me about that time and then maybe how you overcame it.
So there is definitely a time in which I felt that, and that was a time of 18 months. I felt that for 18 months when I got out of active duty after serving for 8 years and was unemployed for 18 months. And so how that worked was how that went down was I was living in Germany. My wife was also an Army Nurse Corps officer. So we both got married when we were both active duty. We were living in Europe. We kind of eloped in Copenhagen, Denmark. And fun fact, Copenhagen is kind of the Las Vegas of Europe. You can get married pretty quick over there.
Know that.
And so our marriage certificate is in 3 languages. It's number 1 is English, Danish, and the third is German.
Very cool.
So it goes to show there's a lot of Germans that get married in Copenhagen. So that's a fun fact. Copenhagen is the Las Vegas to get married in Europe. After we got married later on the year, I made the transition to go from being full-time in the military to part-time. So that goes into the Army Reserve. And I feel that was a huge stepping stone in my career, but it was only on a part-time basis. During those 18 months, I was trying to find a full-time job while my wife was working in uniform, serving the United States military in Germany. And it was a real struggle for me to try to leverage this new experience of, let me go out there in the workforce and apply for a job. Let me put myself out there with the skills, abilities, and experiences that I have. And then competing against the small demographic of the American military community in Germany, because that was the target I was trying to get a job in. Unsuccessful in trying to get a full-time job. So what I did was I did a lot of training. I did more part-time gigs in the Army Reserve. I honed down on my skills. I learned more about financial planning. I learned my other counterparts with my other Army colleagues, and I learned what other parts of our organization did. And so I grew myself professionally during those 18 months while not having a full-time job. I was fortunate that my wife was able to put food on the table, because also during those 18 months, my first daughter, my only daughter currently, my firstborn child, was born during those 18 months.
Wow.
So I was in a unique position in which my wife was the breadwinner, bringing in stable income, and I was bringing part-time income in, unstable, erratic, but some money was coming in. So those 18 months of unemployment was really a hard time, because the next part that adds more drama is I did not renew my nursing license.
Oh, wow. So that was a stable thing you can fall back on too.
That was stable. Yeah. I could have renewed my license and said, let me go work as a nurse. I can go even working as a volunteer at the local military hospital would have kept my credentials up as a nurse. So by the time going back to the States, I could work as a nurse. But in my mind, I already decided in those first 2 months of being a public affairs officer in the military, I said, this is what I want to do. So I went for broke. I decided not to purposely not renew my nursing license, because I was gonna go full on with this new decision to go in this new career and make it work, using my experience in photography, content management, being a public affairs officer, the training that I had, and growing myself professionally. I'm gonna make this work. And I felt that the fruits of my labor, those 18 months, really came in when in 2018 we moved back to America, and we ended up living in the DMV area. And in the first month, I was able to get a speechwriter job.
Nice.
As a contractor. And so that was how I felt I got my big break. I'm going to make it. I can now put food on the table. I can work in a career that will help bring me to the next level and where I want to go in public relations. And then ultimately where I am now into digital strategy.
I mean, 18 months is a long time, and I'm just trying to think through how I would have felt being in that situation. Was there
Let
any
me add more drama to that. So there's so even more drama. So when we moved back in 2018, neither myself or my wife had a job lined up moving back to America. Because my wife also made the transition to get out from full time, and instead of going part time like I did in the Army, she completely got out. She fulfilled her time commitment, and my wife, add more drama. My wife was about 2 months away from delivering our second child. So coming back to America, coming from overseas, going back to America with no job lined up and expecting another child.
You guys are risk takers. You probably like to do all that, bungee jumping and skydiving. Like, it's probably all up your alley, right? You like that risk, that adrenaline. Let's do it.
The big part, though, is that we had family and friend support that allowed us to give us a place to stay. But we also had, and I highly encourage every veteran who's trying to get out to make sure you have a buffer of 3 to 6 months of living expenses to support yourself, because that transition time, it is unstable. You have no idea what's going on. So you got to make sure you got to put food on the table. And it's even more riskier when you have a family you got to feed.
I feel like I might already know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyways, because 18 months is a very difficult time. Was there any one single thing you can think of that kept you motivated during those 18 months? Because that's hard. 18 months is a long time.
I loved what I was doing, even on a part-time basis. Being a public affairs officer, strategy planning for it, the missions that I went on, telling the story of what we were doing in the military in Europe. I loved doing it. And that's what kept me going. And every time I went to the job, I said, this is great. This is what I want to do. I want to keep doing more of it. How can I keep doing this? And that was my motivation to keep going those 18 months. Let me keep trying. Let me get my resume going. Let me talk to somebody who knows somebody. Let me try to find a conference so I can talk to someone in person. Can I bounce my resume off you? Can I get this experience? Can I do this part-time gig with you? Can I go shadow you for a day? I felt like I was assertive enough and I will say aggressive to a point in which people were annoyed with me. But that's what kept me going, was wanting to do something that I was pumped to do. And I didn't want to go back to nursing. Maybe that was the other motivator. I loved what I was doing, and I didn't want to go back to my old job.
It's rare to find something that you like to do as a job. So if you do find it, it seems like you clung on pretty hard to it. So, okay. All right. Well, that was a deep dive. A couple some interesting questions that as I was going through your bio and stuff. Let's talk about Wasa Media for a second. Am I saying it right? Is it Waza?
That's correct. It's Wasa Media.
Wasa Media. Okay. What do you guys hope to accomplish in the next 5 years with that?
So currently, so we're digital marketing. We're a digital marketing agency. A lot of services that we do is consulting, but we also help businesses with the things that they may not have staff for, which is content creation, social media management, ads, and we also do some PR support as well. So we do a lot of consulting, but we also help with the strategy planning, but also kind of get the additional support that they need, because we see this with a lot of small businesses where they wear a lot of hats. So the CEO may have to do all the content creation and may have to learn about ads, but really they want to focus on getting the product or doing great customer service. And so the marketing portion kind of comes an afterthought. But the problem is they need marketing so other people can know about the product or service they do. So we hope to be that solution. We know we are that solution to help them with amplifying who they are, getting their message across, and marketing so that they can get sales. Because that's the ultimate goal for the businesses that we're trying to do. Now, for nonprofits, the biggest thing is awareness, and also making sure they get the funding they need to keep operational. Because they have employees they need to they have overhead they need to do, and despite the great cause they have, they need money in order to garnish all that support and keep operations going on a daily basis. And so, but I keep thinking about the phrase, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, can anyone hear it fall? It goes something like that. I'm paraphrasing. So, and it's the same way with marketing. If you've got a great product out there that no one knows about, is it really a great product?
So that's what you guys come to.
That's where we come in as the problem solver, to let people know this is who you are, this is what you stand for, and let's get more attention to who you are.
Okay. And where do you guys see yourself growing into in the upcoming years?
We want to take over the world, just like everyone else. What are you
talking? So you want this to be like a big? I mean, would that be something in your foreseeable future? You want to grow into like, the next big? I don't even know one. The first thing I think of is Gary Vee's media company.
Oh, like that's an empire. Yeah, that's a huge.
Is that would that be what you want to do, or do you want to keep it like maybe something small, medium-sized business, or you want a big corporation? What are you thinking?
I would like to see us to get big. Number one, because it would be fun. But right now, with our 5-10 year plan, is to continue to grow and scale. The scaling is a big part for every business. So we're looking at scaling up, so that way we can continue to serve more clients. But I'm going back to the part I mentioned before. I think learning about all the different industries has been a really fun factor. A fun part of being in this company, working with all different types of products and services, learning more about what they do. So that way, when we go venture off and find a new client, we're like, oh, that's interesting. That kind of relates to another client that we worked and helped provide strategy support with. Let's take the thing that we did for them and apply it to you with an interesting twist, or something that's more applicable for your audience. Because not every tactic that we do is applicable for every product or service, and not every platform is right for your audience. And so it really comes down to making sure that we customize the strategy for each product or service or organization that we're working with, because it's not a one size all fits strategy. It has to be custom.
Makes me want to get into the business. I imagine the diversity in clients that you have is pretty interesting, like just to see how each one works. I'm interested. But okay, taking another like complete shift now to another question, is biggest lesson you've learned since transitioning from ER nursing to some of these other creative fields? What would you say that is?
The biggest difference, I feel the biggest lesson I've learned is that, and I'll bring up what I mentioned earlier, is that my analytical, logical mindset really carried over from the nursing side over to the creative. Because what I do with digital strategy is I do research and I do testing. I am a huge proponent of testing what works and what doesn't work, A/B testing, and doing it at scale. Because as a number, with numbers, that's how you can see correlation, you can see causation, you can see trend analysis, big numbers. And when you're working with big numbers, you can see relationships. And so what I found is by testing, I'm able to see all those happen, and I can make adjustments to strategy. And so really my nursing experience has helped me in the world of digital strategy using the scientific process.
Everything connects. Okay. Now this should be a fun one. Given, I don't even know how to apply this question, but I'll let you interpret it how you will. What would you say is the most difficult aspect of your jobs? If you can think of one, what's the first thing that might come up?
The most difficult part about all the jobs is patience. Patience was something I learned during those 18 months. So I felt like I was able to practice that in the job itself. Digital strategy is something that it does take patience. It takes time to see results. One things that we do with clients is we make sure that, it's 6 to 12 months is when you'll start seeing results in the long term, especially if you're doing branding. If you're trying to build your brand, you can't build it in a day. Unless you become a hit like the actors and actresses from Squid Games.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen those articles where like their Instagram account was like 40,000 and now it's 40 million?
Yeah.
But how they got there was not through their own money, but was through the show, which spent millions of dollars to make it. And as a byproduct, their influence has gone off the charts in numbers wise. And so their influence is now even higher than when it was before. And for those who have watched Squid Games and started looking into some of the actor and actresses profiles, some of them have waited a long time for a big break. Some of them got their big break with Squid Games and did really, really well. But those are things that you can't really control. And so going back to the question and the point with patience, patience is key and doing it every day, executing the strategy, and then analyzing on a quarterly, biannually, and periodically monitoring your progress over time. That's how you grow your brand, and that's how you'll be able to see results over time. So you got to be patient.
I didn't expect that answer. I think that was a fascinating one. Patience is definitely important. Now, you kind of feel like you almost answered the next question that I was going to ask. So let's get to the last one. This is one of my favorite ones because I think mentors are so important in life, having a mentor of some sort. In this case, role models. Can you tell me about any role models that you may have had and how they may have inspired you?
It's I think it's timely with the question that you presented because one of my role models passed away in September.
Sorry to hear that.
And he passed away. He was actually one of the people that really tested me to make sure I was fit to be a public affairs officer in the United States Army. So Don Peters was a public affairs officer that I worked with in Germany. And in Germany, we were dealing with a lot of things that were going on. A lot of political things, a lot of international things that were going on. So it was highly contested in terms of the public relations operation front. We were dealing with a lot of stuff with media, a lot of stuff with different nations. And when he learned that I wanted to take on the role as a public affairs officer and continue my career in the public affairs realm, he really took me aside and he said, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" And he started, I felt like he interrogated me. He started drilling down questions like, "Do you want to be woken up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. with that 3 a.m. phone call?" And a reporter goes, "I have this question and it's really heated. By the way, I'm recording. I need your answer now." And he started drilling hard questions like that. And I'm like, at first I was kind of nervous, but then I'm like, sure, I can do that. In retrospect, thinking about those questions, I'm like, man, I don't think I want to do it. Some of those questions were really, really hard, especially with dealing with reporters, because it really puts you on the spot. Sure. Because being the spokesperson of an organization really puts you at risk because number one, you have to make sure you're echoing what the boss, you're the spokesman for the boss, spokesperson for the organization, and you represent, you become the face of it, which is kind of an interesting thing. And I'll put a side note on why we've all noticed whenever Elon Musk, who owns Tesla and the other companies that he has, whenever he says something, either stock goes up and down. So as a spokesperson, so he being the face and also the operations manager for it, really carries huge weight. On the military side, we can become replaceable. We're all replaceable. But as a spokesperson, if you say something wrong, you can get fired. Your career can be on the line, but also the reputation of the organization that you hurt becomes in jeopardy. So there's a lot at stake. And in the current time and where things were going on, when I started picking up the public affairs hat, I think it was important that he drilled down on me and made sure and tested me. Was I the right person for the job? And I think I passed the test, which is why I'm here now. But we continued on the mentor relationship, in which I learned more through him and how he was and how his role as an advisor and counselor to the boss, and being able to give that hard advice, because really we're there to protect the organization and the brand reputation of the organization. Our bosses have enough rank, and they've got they have enough to protect themselves. Is how I feel. But the organization itself is the long-lasting legacy that needs to be protected as a public affairs officer. Our job is to guide our bosses in the right direction. And whether the boss says, yes, I agree with your recommendation, let's do that, or no, the boss is the boss, and we will follow what the boss says. But I will make sure, and through his leadership and through his and how he walked, I make sure that I let the boss know tactfully what the right direction we should go in, based off data, and also my subject matter expertise in the realm of public relations, public affairs. And so being that advice and counselor and being a good one is what I felt that I learned the most from him during his time in service. And I made sure we kept in contact since Germany. I got to link up with him here in the DMV, and I'm glad I got to see him before he went in September. But how he carried himself and how he presented himself as a public affairs officer, even as a person, is a huge inspiration to me. And I hope that I can at least carry half of what he holds as a person in my life, and continue to live in the way that he did.
Well, it sounds like he was an excellent role model and great guy. And I'm glad that you were able to bring him up, and he's now immortalized in this video. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, well, we're gonna start wrapping up the video now. I think we went a little bit over, but this is great. Hopefully we got deep enough into some parts. Now, we're gonna end with two things. The first thing is kind of like a final tip or advice that you might have. And again, this is how you interpret it, and perhaps maybe in the direction of if someone is interested in pursuing the types of roles that you're in, maybe say digital strategist, but you can take it in any angle you want. What would you say to those individuals that are interested in doing what you do?
You have to be a practitioner. You got to get on these platforms every day. You gotta do it yourself. And because that's how you know how to be an advisor. And because you lose your credibility if you just if you say you can do something but don't do it. I think of it as like lip syncing. For those who lip sync, that's not really singing. It looks like you're doing it, but you're really not. You're a poser. And so if you're looking at digital strategy, number one, you gotta tweet, you gotta put up an Instagram reel. You don't have to be a good dancer, but experiment, try new things, test it out. You have to know how these platform works. How they work is by actually going on them and testing it. So that's the big thing in order to get into digital strategy. And then what I found out is talking in person or looking at different age demographics. We know that Facebook is now the huge growing demographic is 55 and older. And then we know that a lot of professional organizations and news media use Twitter, and Instagram is starting to copy more of, not only has copied stuff from Snapchat, but now also copying stuff from TikTok with their new collabs feature, and also their remix stuff. So and we know TikTok is a much younger audience. However, there is a growing audience of 35 and older. They're starting to get on the bandwagon. And what we know is from past experience is that when older people start getting on the platform, the younger people are like, my parents are on this platform. This is not cool anymore.
Interesting. Huh.
We saw that with Facebook, and then people the younger generation started moving away because who wants to be friends with their parents on these platforms? Right? It's weird.
I was just thinking about that the other day. That's funny. Makes sense. Okay.
So practice, post something every day, experiment with it. And that's how you'll be able to understand how these platforms work. And so when you're strategizing, you have firsthand data of your own data to see how it works, and then also possibly consult others.
Okay. Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Last bit, any plugs or shout outs that you have?
Yes, do want to plug Wasa Media, and you can find us at Waza, WAZA media.com. And we can help you with your digital strategy, get your name out there, and also help amplify your message. Whether you're a business or a nonprofit, you have a cause or a belief that you want others to know about, talk with us and we'll help get you there. The other plug want to do is if you need a headshot, and Brian, we need to talk about you getting a headshot. So you got to come over to the studio and get a headshot.
I haven't updated mine in like 10 years, actually.
I know. I saw your headshot you sent over to
me. 10 years. It's been a long time. Yeah, we should chat.
Got to update. 10 years, man. That's a long time. Yeah, you're due for an update. So headshots. You want to check out my headshot portfolio, headshotcrew.com/Jeku Arce. That's JEKU ARCE, or my portfolio page, jekuarce.com. Is the second plug I will give out to your awesome audience.
Awesome. Well, make sure to plug both of those in the description of this video. And we're gonna wrap this video up. Honestly, very awesome. I feel like I've learned more from this than our last meeting. It's just like we talked a lot last time, and I learned a lot this time. So it was actually a very great pleasure to have you on. Maybe have you gone on in the future again, but thanks again for joining in on our podcast today.
Thanks. I hope to join you for happy hour one day. I can share some of this whiskey with your those who are in our virtual audience.
yeah, next time. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks guys, and we'll see you next time.